In this tutorial, we're diving into size and I will cover all the different options available, which are fill, fit, fixed, relative, and overflow. Let's start with fit. With fit, the size of an element is dictated by its content. So if we select this text element and change the size to fit, what will happen is that the size of the element will adjust to the content. So right now the text is on 2 lines, but if we want to, for example, put the text on 1 line, what you will see happen is that the size of the element will change based on the content. Also, if we put the text on 3 lines, the same thing will happen. Now let's discuss fill. With fill, the selected element will always fill up the box where the element is placed in. So if we change the size of this text element to fill, what will happen is that the size of this element will fill up all the available space within the box that it's in. Important to note is that when you set the size to fill, you will see something appear, which is FR, which stands for fractional. And with it, you can set a fractional value to define how much space a single element should occupy. To illustrate this, let's drag a column of 3 underneath this section. If all the elements are set to 1 FR, which is the case right now, then each element will occupy an even space. So here we have 3 elements, and thus each element will occupy 1/3 of the space that is available within this box. But what happens when we change the fractional value, let's say of this element to the left to 2, you will see that right now this element will occupy twice as much space. So right now this element occupies 1/2 of the space available, and the other 2 automatically only occupy 1/4 of the space available. That's it for fill, and now let's discuss fixed. With fixed, you define the width or height manually. So the size of an element does not change based on its content or the box that it's in. So if we change this text element to fixed, we can now set a fixed width and height for this element. So let's change it to 400. And what you will see is that no matter the amount of content that is within this element, the size, or in this case, the width, will not change because we have set it to a fixed width. Option 4 is relative. And with relative sizing, you can define the width or height in percentages. And 100% would be the maximum width or height available in the box it is in. So let's change the size of this text element to relative and then put it to 100%. And indeed, what you will see is that right now this text element occupies 100% of the space available from the box it is in. If we now change it to, let's say, 50%, it will now occupy 50% of the available space. In addition to the 4 sizing options, there is also the option to set a max height and width and a minimum height and width. So if we go back to the 3 columns, and change this to 1 FR, so they will occupy an even space, you see that there is a minimum height of 200. Let's change this to 500. And what we're essentially telling this section is that no matter what happens, no matter how many images or whatever or text we add to this section, the minimum height will always remain 500 pixels. And now, last but not least, is overflow. So let's focus back on this section, and with overflow we see 3 different options, which is show, hide, and scroll. With show, the content that falls outside the limits of the box will still be shown. So if we change the overflow of this section to show, the content that falls out of the box is still visible. Also, when we preview the site, you see that the content is still visible. If we change the overflow back to hide, the content that falls outside the limits of the box will not be shown. So let's click on preview, and indeed the content will not be shown that is outside the limits of the box. Then there's also the option for scroll. And when that is enabled, a scroll bar will be added if the content is too big for the box it is in. So right now we set it to scroll. If we click on preview, we can now scroll to still be able to see all the content in this box. And that's it for size. So I hope this video gives you a good understanding of all the different options available.